And now it's time for Mob Talk Radio with your host, Jeff Canarsie.
Yo, Lord Willin, Jeff Canarsie, Mob Talk Radio. Check it out. Yo, we stay quiet like Russell Buffalino when things will get ugly like Pepsi's death in Casino. Who do we know? No one, nobody. But we're all well respected like Dellacroce and Gotti. I know wild nights, Havana not turned. Light up a cigar and watch your spot burn. You'll get patty whacked, I'm tough like Irish dock workers. Rubber guys with guys, hooligans and block lurkers. Corner berserkers, street savvy soldiers. You owe, you better pay. Don't make me say I told you. Code you don't betray, I say what I mean. Providence and Brooklyn all the way to the bean. I'd rather be unseen, like Vinny the Chin. I don't gotta go to Vegas to see cities of sin. Pull the pin, drop bombs like Danny Green. I write homicide like the murder machine. Lansky Luciano, mastermind the racket. Up in the clam house with $1 million in my jacket. Move around when the streets get darker. Pay homage to real bosses like Gambino and Patriarcha. Mob talking, but you don't talk to the mob. Lord Will and Jeff Canarsie, we stay on our job. This is Mob Talk, straight from the streets. Mob Talk, the life over beats. Lord Will and Jeff Canarsie, bringing you the real. Kill all rats, you already know the deal. This is Mob Talk, straight from the streets. Mob Talk, the life over beats. Lord Will and Jeff Canarsie, bringing you the real. Kill all rats, you already know the deal.
Hey, welcome to Mob Talk Radio. I am your host, Jeff Canarsie. I hope everybody had a great week. I took a week off. I had some other creative sort of projects going on. This week, tonight's show, whatever the case may be for you, we're going to do some Q&A, followed by Tommy Eboli, which is a very interesting character in mob lore. Now, I did get a lot of questions. Some of them I just can't answer for particular reasons, not because I don't want to answer them, not because it's too in-depth, but sometimes when I get the questions, people keep like loading more on top after I've already downloaded them and started to sort of format how I'm going to do my show. So if I didn't get to it, it's not because it wasn't interesting, or it's not because I don't like you or something like that. It's just because I have a certain amount of time I like to do my show in, and I like to give myself time to kind of go off the path a little bit. And if I cover everybody's question, every single person's question, we'll never get to any topics because it'll always be questions. We didn't get that many questions this week, and that's fine. I kind of expected that, especially taking a week off. But what I really want to do before we get started is really get to some news and notes. And yes, we're going to talk about a couple of things here right off the bat. The first thing I want to talk about is Joey Merlino. I want to get that off my chest first. Then we'll talk about John Gotti Jr. III and his fight coming up November 2nd. And then we're going to talk about the alleged mob hit in the Bronx, in case you've been living under a rock and didn't hear about that. But I think the best way to start this is sort of talk about Joey Merlino for a minute. Now, the one thing that people need to understand is that Joey did take a plea deal to basically taking funds from gambling. He, in court, told the judge he only took $2,500. He didn't admit to being the alleged boss of the Philadelphia Mafia. He didn't admit to being a criminal. He just simply admitted to taking money from a gambling debt or operation. $2,500 is nothing. It came out recently that the government has, and I've seen the documents that were handed into the court, the sentencing memorandum, and et cetera, and the government's only asking for 10 months, and I find that absolutely interesting for a lot of different reasons. First of all, we have to take a step back, and I know this is like regurgitated information for a lot of people, but it's important that we understand how we got to this fucking point to begin with. The first thing that's the most important is all the fraud charges were dropped against Joey. They were bullshit charges to begin with, and I have sat here for fucking 6 months now screaming the facts to you people, and a lot of people just either don't hear me, don't believe me, or I don't know what the case is. But let me just, in a quick summation, when the government brings in rats to lie, your J.R. Rubio, the cross-dressing weirdo that he is, and the fucking the Hamburglar fucking Wayne Kreisberg, neither one of those guys could tell the truth to save their fucking life. The government knew it. And that's why the government didn't choose to pursue a retrial of those charges. Even Judge Sullivan admonished them in court saying, wait a second, you sat here for the last however many weeks and told us that you had an open and shut case, you had all the evidence, and that the evidence that you provided or that you would try to prove in this trial would convict Joey Merlino of the allegations that you've made against him. Why all of a sudden are you dropping the case? It didn't make sense to Judge Sullivan. I thought it was fantastic. I'm not going to lie. I was clapping. You know, the whole golf clap deal. Because Kreisberg wasn't believable in any sense of the word. J.R. Rubio was like Forrest Gump on the fucking on the stand, and then he just making up shit and making faces at people and just complete jerk off, this guy. But the other thing I wanted to say about this, especially in the fraud case, if you're going to bring fraud charges against anybody, be it fucking Mr. T, fucking Mr. Rogers, fucking Captain Kangaroo, for Christ's sakes, if you're going to bring charges against these guys, fraud charges, maybe you should prove the fucking fraud. Maybe, I don't know, there should be wiretaps for him talking about it. There should be, like, checks written to him, cash being transferred, cash being dropped off. I don't know, Western fucking Union. These are things that, as a juror, I would be looking to see, instead of just somebody saying it so. And the government always relies on people saying it so, which means that they say it happened, so it fucking happened. And so the other important part to this is that when they talk about the Medicaid fraud with the cream, there's a really good argument that was made with in regards to Joey Merlino, was as infamous as he is for allegations that have never been proven in a court of law. This is what the press says about him. So take that as you want. If he is this fly-by-night mafia superstar, fucking Dapper Don kind of guy, think about all the fucking doctors he would know. Think about all the famous people he would know. Do you really think he's going to fucking nickel and dime 4 fucking doctors or 5 fucking doctors for nothing when he could say, fuck this, I'm going to get 90 doctors and really make some fucking money? It just doesn't make sense. Guys like this don't do shit on and when I say guys like this, I mean if we're talking about an archetype here that the government says is a mobster, all right? That's the government's words. These guys do not typically do things in small fashion. It's not like Joey Merlino is fucking like Lefty Ruggiero cracking the fucking meters with a hammer trying to get the quarters out of it. He's so destitute. That's not the case. So the idea that he would use 4 or 5 of these doctors and not like the 80, 90, or 100 or whatever the fuck he could get, considering if you listen to what the government alleges about who Joey is, it just doesn't make sense. And the other thing too, and this is where I'm going to cap it off, is that if Joey had done any of this shit, right, why wasn't a single fucking doctor arrested? Why wasn't a single doctor fined? Why wasn't a single doctor have their license fucking revoked? And we're talking like dozens of doctors here. We're not talking 3 or 4. We're talking dozens. So the idea is, why weren't any of them indicted? Why weren't any of them in any trouble? Why didn't any of them lose their license? Very simple, cut and fucking dry, that the government had a target on Joey Merlino from the beginning. They get a hard-on for these guys for some reason. Maybe they're like, I don't know. Maybe they got some like closeted issues going on. I don't know. But anyway, so moving right ahead, Joey pleads guilty to the gambling. All right, $2,500, no big deal. Gambling's about to be, if it's not completely legalized at this point. The problem is that Joey's sentencing calls for a minimum of minimum being house arrest or not free to go. It's never going to happen. Joey's never going to be free to go. Maybe that ought to be Joey's new nickname, and instead of all these other nicknames I keep hearing people give to him, maybe it's Joey Free to Go Merlino. I think that would be perfect. Joey Free to Go Merlino. That's a great fucking nickname right there. So if anybody's listening, Joey Free to Go Merlino. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna wear the t-shirts. Joey Free to Go Merlino. But the sentencing guidelines come for, basically it boils down to either house arrest, some type of probation, up to 2 years in federal prison. Now, The problem is that the government is going, like I said, the government's only asked for 10 months, which is highly suspect to me. But then again, it's a piece of shit fucking gambling charge. Most people that are charged or have been charged in the past by Judge Sullivan for shitty little gambling get house arrest. He typically doesn't hammer people for gambling charges. But if you look at the other co-defendants in this case, and I'm not talking about the rats, you look at Patsy Perello, gets hammered, absolutely fucking hammered. And so you kind of got to weigh your options here. And the way that Judge Sullivan is going to look at this, it's a sliding scale. If you're unfamiliar with criminal law, unfortunately, I am. Like many other of my listeners and the people that I do know in this world that have instances they'd rather not talk about. But when you're sentenced, they have sentencing guidelines. That's just the first bullshit. Then you have sentencing memorandums, and you have pre-sentencing guidelines and pre-sentencing reports and all of this crazy shit. And a judge basically sits there and he looks at all of this shit, all the shit you've ever done, good, bad, and indifferent, and sort of kind of justifies how he's going to fuck you in the ass. I hate to say it any other way than that. That's the only other way I can say it. Now, in the case of Joey, he can go by the government's assertions. Now, that's not necessarily a fact. If the government says that Joey Merlino is Al Capone, it doesn't make it a fucking fact. But unfortunately, the government can name a list of whatever the fuck they think Joey has done and sort of use that as leverage to try to say this is why we want the sentencing the way they do. But like I said, they're only asking for 10 months, and they're not. It doesn't seem like, to me, in any event, like they're pushing the issue. But Judge Sullivan is likely going to look at past convictions, past acts. Was this criminal act violent? Who was hurt as a result of this? What was the money? And so that's where we're going to be on October 17th at the sentencing at 4:30 p.m. In Manhattan. I will be there, sitting there just to see what happens. Now, there is this whole thing about an infamous doctor's letter. Ooh, that fucking jerk-off, Dave Ratweiser, who's fucking retiring, and I love it. Good riddance, Dave. Find something new to do. Try a new cheese somewhere else. Preferably fucking Florida or something like in the Midwest, like fucking Missouri. You're a jerk off. Goodbye. Now George's going to have to hold his own hand. So that's going to be that. But I think realistically, I think what's going to happen to Joey is he's probably going to get on the higher end. I don't want him to get on the higher end. I want him just to walk the fuck out and stick it to the government. They didn't have a fucking case, but it is what it is, and I think Joey likely is probably going to get on the higher end of that. I don't want him to, but I think judging on past convictions and shit like that, and judging sort of Judge Sullivan's narrative and the way he sort of looks at anybody who's alleged to be an organized crime, he's an Irish guy. He doesn't like Italians to begin with. So, I mean, I think that he's probably going to go on the higher scale. I think the max Joey does is a year and 7 months. On the low end of that, I just don't think he's going to buy the government's 10 months. Unless there's something on the back burner, which we're going to get to in a minute. But the point I'm trying to make here, and I know I just bypassed something that I really wanted to talk about when it came to this case. But it's just one of those things where, the letter. That's what it was. See, Dave, that fucking Ratweiser gets me going in 90 directions. I can't stand that prick. He mentioned that Joey Merlino's cardiologist had, there was basically a letter that was written, sealed, handed to the judge, and obviously that is going to go towards the judge sentencing. Maybe Joey has some issues that he would be better served in house arrest. I'm not going to debate what those are because as far as I'm concerned, that's his personal health. That's not fucking news. I'm only talking about it because I'm explaining what Ratweiser did along with George Anesthesia, who looks like a fucking gremlin. But yeah, that's basically it. I don't think that a medical letter is going to sway a judge. But if it's a situation where we're talking once again about a fucking gambling charge and the guy's got a legitimate health concern that can be better addressed in a different setting and situation, then I'm all for it. And I think the judge should take that into consideration. But just judging this guy on what he's kind of done with other people, I don't see. First of all, I'll scream hallelujah at the top of my fucking lungs in court if they just let him go. That would be fantastic. We'll throw a big fucking party here in New York. But knowing Joey, he'd want to get the fuck out of New York immediately. But all that being said, that's kind of what's going on there. I will be in attendance for that to support Joey. Hopefully that it has a better result. Listen, a year and 7 is nothing. That's no time at all. That's like a fucking couple of naps and you're out. You don't even take. That's a situation where you don't even take your fucking shoes off. You're not going to be there that long. But who wants to do time? Now, on the back end of all of this, the concern would be, and my suspicion would be, is that the government never gives in. If you look at the case of John Gotti, and I make this let's talk about John Gotti Jr. for a second. 5 trials in 3 fucking years or whatever it was. Something like fucking insane, like back to back to back to back to back to back, or 3 trials in 5, whatever it was. I always get those two like flip-flopped, but the government doesn't give up. They never have, they never will. They didn't give up with John Gotti Sr., they didn't give up with like Al Capone, they didn't give up with Lucky Luciano, they're not going to give up with Joey Merlino. That's just the truth. They want Joey behind bars, they're going to do whatever they can to get him there. So my speculation is that the government just doesn't say, you know what, we can't win this case, so we're just going to let him walk. The government has never let a fucking alleged, once again, let me say this, alleged, the mob boss walk. They don't do that unless they know there's something down the pipeline. Because it often becomes one of these things of, you know what, we didn't get him on this, but we know that there's fucking indictments coming out of fucking North Jersey and South Jersey. Fuck him, we got him. And that's what I think is likely what the thinking was at that time. I don't really have more information. I have a little bit, but I like everybody else, it's kind of like reading into this. I don't want to push it too far out into space. But the reality is that with there being multiple cooperators in the thing in Jersey, one of the cooperators having loosely being a made man in the Philadelphia Mafia is a problem. Philadelphia has always had problems externally. It's always the shitheads that they bring in, that your Ron Previties, John Vese's. These are guys that they brought in. Very rarely does it go from internal, external, meaning somebody who's been in the streets for a long time and then just fucking ejaculates out of their mouth with telling on people. Nicky DeCrow Caramandi, Tommy Del Giorno, those are the type of guys that were from within, and this time it's from within, and it's a big problem for guys in Philly because you don't know how far stretching that this reaches. Now, if you believe the indictment that there were several made members of the hierarchy of the Philadelphia Mafia in attendance at some of these meetings with drug trafficking, which I don't believe for one fucking minute. And I'll tell you why. The reason why I don't believe it is because one of the fucking informants, not one of the informants, one of the gentlemen that was named in this indictment was caught on a wiretap basically saying, fuck Philly. I don't care what they said. I don't care if there were orders for us not to sell drugs. I'm doing whatever the fuck I want. I have a tendency to just kind of say, all right, well, there's your proof right there. The allegations are that the Philadelphia Mafia or some part of the hierarchy or some captains or whatever are involved in drug dealing, but here you are having a guy on a wiretap fucking saying, it's against the rules, we're not allowed to do this, fuck them, I'm doing what I want. Well, he goes and does what he fucking wants, and now everybody gets indicted because of it, because he's got a big mouth and he's a dumb fuck. I can't break it down any more than that. When you say stupid shit, you talk. Your mouth can be your biggest fucking asset, and your mouth can be your biggest fucking downfall in that lifestyle. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and as we move forward, I think we're going to see a little bit more coming out of Philly. But I think for the most part, the most important thing right now is that Joey just, if he has to take a bid, let him do it. Let him just throw his fucking head back and his feet up and relax for a little bit. But that's what's going on October 17th, and I got caught on a rabbit trail, so please excuse me for that. Okay. Next news note. John Gotti III will be fighting Friday, November 2nd at Twin River Casino in Lincoln, Rhode Island. This will be his third professional fight. He is 2-0. He is undefeated as a fighter. And if you saw the first two fights, believe me, this guy can throw. And his opponents did not have much time in the ring as he ended the fights very quickly on both occasions. Now, if you do want to go to the fight, here's what you need to do. Contact me on Twitter at RealMobTalk7 or check me out on Facebook, Jeff Canarsie. Send me a message. That's really the best way. I'm not going to give out my phone number on here, but if you want to go to the fight and you want tickets, make sure you contact me as soon as possible at RealMobTalk7 on Twitter or go to Facebook and send me a direct message there. And I will hook you up with who you need to talk to get tickets. Tickets are going to move quick, guys. So if you want, and girls, excuse me. So if you want to go to the fight, the best thing that you can do is to contact me relatively as quick as possible. That way we can make sure that you get tickets. Obviously, I'm not the one who's doing the tickets, so to speak. It's coming through somebody else. But I have their sort of contact information, so I think that would be the best way to go. So you should come on out. Anyway, if you like to play cards, you like to smoke cigars, whatever it is, you maybe like the slot machines, blackjack, whatever it is, come on out to fucking Lincoln, Rhode Island. Let's have a good time. I will be in attendance if you're there. Make sure you come along, come by, say hi, whatever. We'll talk for a few minutes. Whatever you want to do, there's going to be a lot of people I know from Rhode Island that will be there, and a lot of people from New York obviously are going. It's the Gotti home away from home, so make sure that if you're interested in that fight, it's going to be Friday, November. I tried to add September and fucking November together. That's okay. But November 2nd at Twin Rivers Casino. That is in Lincoln, Rhode Island. Okay, the final news note. I think it's the goddamn final news note. It's all these news things today. All right, the final news note before we get to the Q&A is basically about the alleged mob hit that took place in the Bronx a couple days ago. We've talked about this in a great deal before. Basically, let me tell you this first and foremost. It was not a mob hit. The newspapers are going to write this a million different ways. I'm essentially going to pull up the article that I wrote myself on it and sort of read you a couple of parts to it, and then I'll explain why it is it. Basically, more or less, Sylvester Zottola, Jesus, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, so just bear with me. More or less, in the last year, there's been an attempt on his life 4 times. I could easily detail every single instance that happened to him, but I think for the sake of time, it's not prudent to do that. But basically, Sylvester Zottola, who was 71, was shot 4 times in the head, chest, and shoulder being the major areas, sitting in a fucking drive-thru in McDonald's with a girl and her young baby infant in the car. That's the first sign that this is not a mob hit, okay? And it's also not the first incident that happened to Zottola in the last 12 months. Believe it or not, this was the third and final incident. There were 2 other attempts on his life. Back in September of 2017, he was attacked outside of his home and hit over the head. The second incident took place in December of that same year when he was stabbed in his neck in his own home with what the police called a home invasion. Then in June of 2018, Zottola alleged that someone threatened him with a gun outside of his home in the Bronx, and he fired his own weapon several times at the assailant in response. For that, he was arrested and charged with 3 felonies and a misdemeanor, one of those charges being criminal possession of a weapon in the 2nd degree, basically because prior to that he was a felon. And he was literally due in court October 9th, which is tomorrow. That was yesterday. On those allegations. Obviously, he's not going to make a court appearance. According to the FBI, Sylvester Zottola was an associate of Vinny Basciano, having business ties with him to the Joker poker machine industry, according to court documents dating back to the racketeering trial of Vinny Gorgeous Basciano. Allegedly, there was an assault that was committed against Frank Porco on behalf of Vinny Basciano, on behalf of Sylvester Zottola, who was disgruntled at Frank Porco. So the papers are speculating this is a mafia hit. One, you have a guy that's kind of a knock-around guy, been around mob guys most of his life. I've seen things from people saying that this guy is a narcotics trafficker, to a mob boss, to what is he? What is he? Yoga fucking instructor too? Listen, the newspapers get it wrong. They have no idea what the fuck is going on. Listen, the mob doesn't fuck up 3 times. All right? Maybe once or twice. Maybe once. I'll give them that. If they fuck up once, they usually get it done the second time. The mob traditionally does not fuck around when they're going to kill somebody. First of all, we have to take a step back. First of all, this is a Bonanno crime family issue. All right? If you're going to believe everything it said. But it was Joey Merlino who pretty much went to the commission years ago before he became a fucking disgusting rat. And he wanted social clubs gotten rid of, and he wanted a moratorium on killing. No more killings in the mafia, and everyone, the commission agreed on it. So the fact that this is going on is a little fucking strange. This smells to me more like a personal beef because, like I said, the mob does not fucking miss 3 times in a row. It just doesn't make sense. They tried to kill his son. Obviously, I think probably as a message sender to the father. The son lives. The father lives through 2 other fucking hits, and then finally they get the job done. But the problem, the secondary issue I have with this is the way it was done. Apparently, the perpetrator came through a hole in the fence, ran right up to the driver's side car, and just fucking unloaded on him. Broad daylight, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, didn't give a fuck that a young lady and her infant child were in the fucking car. That's as disturbing as it gets. The mob doesn't do that. Mob will not fire into a fucking car with a fucking infant in it. They just won't do it. They won't fucking do it. That's what tells me this is not a mob hit. This is some fucking narcotics type of shit. I can't tell you for 100% this is over narcotics, but this is fucking punk shit. You know, I'm not saying that there's honor in murder whatsoever, but what I'm saying is there's a calculated way of doing it. You hit a guy in fucking the drive-thru at McDonald's at 5 o'clock with 1 million fucking witnesses, cameras fucking everywhere, and you don't even give a fuck that there's a baby in the seat, a car seat in the back. Like, what the fuck? Who does that? An animal does that. So that's what tells me this is not mob related. The newspapers are going to make this sound like it's a vendetta, like it's mob turf war, and this is not what that is. But the counter effects of this are going to be far-reaching, and I say that because if the FBI wasn't on a tick on their ass before, they are now. I guarantee the FBI is all over this, and the unfortunate part now for Salvatore Zottola is he wasn't talking to the cops before. I have nothing to say. Got shot a bunch of times. I got nothing to say. Now his father gets killed. So what are the options now? Is it retribution because he knows maybe who did it? Or does he start talking to the feds? That's a problem. I don't think necessarily his first reaction is going to be talking to the feds, but put yourself in his situation. If this isn't a mob thing, then there's really nothing wrong with him taking matters into his own hands and doing what he's got to do. But I don't buy this as being a mob hit. Everybody and their mother who's written about this, I'm really honest to God. And I'm not saying everyone because I haven't seen everyone's stuff, but I think I'm the only guy that came along and said it wasn't a mob hit. That's it. I speculated on the hit on his son a couple of months ago until I started looking at the tape. It was amateur hour at that time. And I think for just the sake of the context in which I'm talking about, I don't think it's a mob hit. Mob hits, unless it's fucking been amateur hour 4 fucking times, which I fucking doubt. And I'm not laughing about the murder. It's just the audacity of it. It's not a mob hit. This is something personal. It's got to be a personal beef. And guys don't shoot each other over poker machines. Guys will shoot each other over money and drugs. 9 times out of 10. A lot of people have said, oh, it's an African-American guy and blah, blah, blah. Go back and look at the video, zoom in on the hands, and notice he's wearing gloves. People are saying African American because the pants are sagged and all of that nonsense. So, like I said, I wasn't there. I could be totally fucking wrong about that. But that's pretty much what's going on in the Bronx. There hasn't really been a mob hit in New York in a long time, like I said, and I told you a few minutes ago why that is. But I think all of that being said, we're going to go to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to get to a Q&A, and then we're going to get to Tommy Eboli. But like I said, also, before I cut loose on the commercial here, any threats, complaints, etc., you know where to send them. Follow us on Twitter at RealMobTalk7. Go over to Facebook. Type in Mob Talk Radio, give us a like, give us a subscribe there. Even if you hate us, go ahead and subscribe. That way you can get all my latest news, and then you can repost it in your little rat chat rooms and gossip like girls, because that's what you do. Half is. And other than that, we got a bunch of cool things coming up that I can't really talk about, but rest assured, really cool stuff is coming. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get to your Q&A. Stay tuned. In my travels, I'm always looking for a clothing brand that I feel like represents me. Anybody can go to a store and buy a t-shirt with a gimmick, but if you believe in 3 core values like I do, loyalty, honor, and respect, then look no further than Omerta brand clothing. You can catch them at omertamia.com, OMERTAMIA.com, with locations in Europe, California, Boston, Brooklyn, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Washington. They have a great clothing line with hats, shirts, sweatshirts, keychains, anything you might need, stickers. You want the rats to stop snitching? Go right out and get yourself a sticker. But if you want to live your life by the gentleman's code, look no further than Omerta brand clothing. And welcome back to Mob Talk Radio, and we are going to get right into the Q&A, followed by Tommy Eboli. The first question that I have was Frank Lefty Rosenthal a rat? Let's see. Frank Rosenthal was an odds maker and a fixer for the Chicago outfit. We kind of have to know who Frank Lefty Rosenthal was before we can kind of answer the question, because a lot of people may not know who he is. If you've seen Casino, Robert De Niro essentially plays Frank Lefty Rosenthal, or a loose interpretation of that. Anyway, as a kid, he would end up skipping school and sit in the bleachers at Wrigley Field learning the sports betting business. His father also owned several racehorses, so he spent a lot of time at the horse track, pretty much honing his skills, learning the betting business, learning odds and percentages and stuff like that, which would suit him later on down the line. In the mid-1950s, he was working directly for the outfit because of his ability to call the odds almost nearly perfect, and he would end up bringing in millions of dollars a week for the mob. He even would buy contracts from sports bribers that fixed sporting events. So he was sort of anything that was gambling and could be fixed, he was in on. He would eventually be indicted in Chicago, and then he would move his operations to Miami, Florida. By the 1960s, he was pretty much known as the best handicapper in the business. But when the McClellan hearings took place, he ended up getting sequestered, and he took the Fifth Amendment 40 times. And because of his prior indictment, he was actually barred from gambling establishments in Florida and from horse tracks. Rosenthal would end up, after the indictments, he would end up leaving for Las Vegas in the 1960s after pleading no contest to a New York University point-shaving scheme versus UNC. It was also alleged by the FBI that Rosenthal was behind the business bombings and car bombings that took place in the 60s in Florida. Once in Vegas, he becomes sort of the front man for the Stardust, the Fremont Marina, and the Hacienda, which were all controlled by the Chicago outfit at the time. He ended up creating the first ever sports book in Las Vegas, and it was really the only one and the first one that operated out of a casino. His ability at handicapping made the Stardust the leading place for sports bets. He also hired female blackjack dealers, which ended up doubling the Stardust income in a year. So not only did he know the casino business, but he truly understood gambling through and through. In 1976, Rosenthal's begins to have problems. couple of things happened. First, the FBI alleged that Rosenthal was secretly running 4 casinos at once without obtaining a gaming license. A hearing would be called by the Nevada Gaming Commission chairman and future U.S. Senator Harry Reid. Rosenthal would end up losing that hearing and was denied a gaming license based partly because of his arrest record and his documented reputation as an organized crime associate. Also because Tony Spilotro was out in Vegas wreaking fucking havoc. With Spilotro running amok, it sort of just inflamed a lot of things that were going on. And what happens is the Chicago outfit begins to worry that Lefty Rosenthal's getting loose. Rosenthal is really the one who asked the outfit to send out Tony Spilotro to sort of protect him, and some other things were going on. And so essentially the outfit was holding Frank Lefty Rosenthal partly responsible for the fucking mess that was going on in Vegas. To make matters worse, Tony Spilotro was also banging Rosenthal's wife, which was a mob no-no, which created further havoc. And then to even further that complication, Rosenthal just wouldn't stay out of the fucking casinos. He would hire himself at different positions inside the casinos, the food and beverage administrator to the entertainment executive. He just wouldn't stay out of the casinos, and it kept bringing heat, which just further exasperated the situation. What made it even fucking more bad for them was that Rosenthal couldn't take being fucked over by the Nevada Gaming Commission, and he ended up doing his own television show, which came right out of a Las Vegas casino, and he openly debated publicly what he called a witch hunt against him by the Vegas Gaming Commission, the police, and U.S. senators. And it just infuriated the outfit, because not only is Tony Spilotro running fucking amok, and it was on Rosenthal's word and suggestion that Tony Spilotro come out there, so all the murders, the hole in the wall gang, and all that shit Lefty Rosenthal's being blamed for. He won't stay out of the fucking casinos, which creates a massive fucking problem, especially with the skim. He hires himself as the food and beverage administrator, and he hires himself at all these different positions. He does the TV show, and the outfit's just like, this is fucking ridiculous. On October 4th of 1982, after dining at Tony Roma's, Lefty Rosenthal gets into his car and it explodes. Rosenthal only survived the bomb because Cadillac in that year, specifically 1981, in Eldorado's, had installed a stout metal plate underneath the driver's side. The reason why they used the metal plate was to offset balancing issues in the Cadillac Eldorado, really only the 1981. It's long been alleged that Frank Ballestieri was the one who ordered the hit on Rosenthal. I totally 100% believe that. But with all the stuff mentioned, along with all the problems that Lefty had, the casinos started losing a lot of money. And Rosenthal started having legal problems. And the mob was officially done with Rosenthal at that point. And that was a message. He should have died that day. And really, if you think about it, in terms of Las Vegas, the minute that Tony Spilotro went out there and the shit starts happening with Rosenthal and everybody else, this is when the big corporations started coming in, and the mob was being pushed out. And so really, I'm not saying that Rosenthal in any stretch of the imagination is to blame for this, but he had a huge hand in creating a lot of the problems. And I think too, like, there's been a wide assertion that Tony Spilotro is behind Rosenthal getting hit. He really wasn't. Tony Spilotro would face his own fate for running amok and doing what he wanted to do. The mob silenced him very quickly, him and his brother Anthony. So all in all, the mob just got sick of it. And really, the worst thing to happen in the mafia was Tony Spilotro going out to Vegas. It really, really, really created a massive problem. And really, the mob has never had a stranglehold on Vegas ever again after that. It wasn't long after that that the law enforcement and the FBI started, pushing the mob out, and big corporations started taking over. All right, so hopefully that answers your question. I don't believe that Frank Lefty Rosenthal was a rat in any sort of capacity. If he had been, they would have killed him. This They just held him responsible for a lot of the shit that was going on in Vegas. Money talks, and that's the problem. And, there he is calling Chicago, send Tony out here, I need him. And look what happens. And then Tony starts banging his wife, and there's all this other stuff. So, no, it had nothing to do with Frank Lefty Rosenthal being a rat. It had everything to do with just the mob was looking for somebody to blame, and the guy to blame would have been Lefty Rosenthal at the time. All right. So hopefully that answers your question. All right. Next question. Do you think Philadelphia could have been a competitive territory if Angelo Bruno had been more ambitious as boss, or was Philly destined to be in the minor leagues because of the family size and rackets? Do you think if the Philly mob under Bruno would have combined with North Jersey, would they have changed the perception of those territories being the minor leagues? Okay. First of all, with Angelo Bruno, the big part is there was dissension in the ranks. When you have dissension in the ranks, that's a big problem. When guys are on the streets struggling to fucking eat, and you offer up an edict of sorts that you're not going to sell drugs, you're not going to make any profits, but yet I'm going to allow the Gambinos to come in here and do that in Jersey and make tons of money, and I'm going to take a kickback from it, but you guys aren't allowed to do it. I mean, what do you kind of expect is going to happen? So I think being more competitive, Angelo Bruno wasn't that kind of guy at all, and I don't know how he could have been competitive at the time. I don't. The five families would have swallowed him up if he had batted an eyelash at them. So I think in terms of being more ambitious, I think he should have opened the floodgates a little bit and let these guys earn. I think that a happy family is a productive family, and I think that for a long time Angelo Bruno really was good for the mob in Philadelphia, but I think that he lost sight of the changing times. As far as Philadelphia being the minor leagues, I don't know anybody that says they're the minor leagues. You get a lot of reporters, you get a lot of authors that say Philadelphia is a fucking minor league franchise of a bigger mob family, and I don't believe that to be the case. And I'm going to tell you the subtle differences of why I think that. First of all, New York has twice the fucking people Philadelphia does, all right? They have more boroughs, they have more rackets, they have more people, more money. There's a lot more things going on in New York than there are in Philadelphia, right? So then look at the sheer size of a mob family in New York compared to Philadelphia. Now, from what I understand, and this is my opinion, the numbers in Philly are Scarfo era numbers, a little bigger maybe a little smaller, but they're very, very similar. Look, a typical family, and we'll use Bruno as a reference, maybe 80 guys in the day. Maybe, and we're talking May guys, maybe 100 associates or whatever. That can't compare to 500 fucking guys or 600 guys or 700 guys or 800 guys with the five families. You can't compare it. It's a totally different thing. It doesn't mean that one group is more sophisticated, one group is more dangerous, or one group is in the major leagues. It's just a territory issue. If Philadelphia was as big in New York, Philadelphia would have a family the size of New York. I mean, that's just the reality of it. A lot of people have tried to make, and let me say this about Philly. I've spent a lot of time in Philly. I lived in Philly for a little bit, not very long, in South Philadelphia. And let me tell you something about South Philadelphia people. There's always been this sort of critique about New Yorkers are the most rude, snobbish, prickish kind of people. Then you got people that say, oh, no, the people from Boston are snobbish and prudish and all of this obnoxious shit that they say. But let me tell you something, and people say that about Philly. But the thing is that Philadelphians and South Philadelphians especially wear their hearts on their fucking sleeves. They don't take a backward step against anybody. They're not going to put up with shit. They say what they mean, and they're going to punch you in the mouth if they feel disrespected. Philly is not a soft place. I don't know anybody that has been born and raised there that's a soft person. And so from my perspective, I disagree with the idea that Philadelphia is the minor leagues. If you knew, let me say it this way. If you have experiences in Philly or you know people from Philly, then you know immediately that they're not soft guys. They're a small, tight-knit group, and there's something to be said for that. And that's why I think that people underestimate Philadelphia in terms of organized crime. When you're dealing with 150 guys, we'll use the Genoveses for example. You take 150 guys, they probably don't all know each other. There's probably a lot of egos, and there's a lot of competition to rise the ranks and to do this and to do that. But when you take a smaller subgroup that has known each other since childhood, if you believe the allegations and the things that the newspapers in Philadelphia say, then you really have a tight-knit group. I swear to God, and this is my stance on it, and then I'll move on, is that I would rather take 20 people I've known my whole entire life. I would trust them before I ever trust a motherfucker walking off the streets. That's the truth. Because when things get fucked up, you got to be able to trust people. And when you've gone to like grade school, kindergarten, first grade, middle school, high school with your friends, and you're all involved in the same thing, that's trust. And that's trust over 40 fucking years, not over 40 seconds or 40 months. So I don't agree with Philadelphia being in the minor leagues. Trust me, when it comes to not fucking around, when it comes to being tough, Philadelphia is very, very, very tough. But they don't have the territory, and they don't have they only have but so much to work with. So I agree to an extent that, there's not as many rackets, but this is why, and this is another thing, a lot of people don't get this, but if you think that Philadelphia is stuck like in a 40-mile radius, you're out of your fucking mind. Listen, mob families work together. There's rackets in Rhode Island, rackets in Connecticut, rackets in upstate New York, Florida. If you think that one subgroup is just stuck to like 90 miles, you're out of your mind. That's not how the mob works. And that's really as simple as I can get. All right, next question. What made the Gingellini brothers on opposite sides of the mob? That's a question for them. I really, listen, I really can't answer that because I'm not a part of that. I've never sat down with anybody from sort of that part of the world and I directly asked that question. But I think the easiest way I can answer it is to just tell you that oftentimes there are guys that agree with one side and there are guys that agree with the other. I think that it came down to there was a youth movement in Philadelphia. I think there was a lot of backlash over John Stanfa, who had no fucking right to be there to begin with. He was sent by New York to Philadelphia to take over. And what's unfortunate about that is I think John Stanfa, coming from an old world perspective, thought murder and mayhem was the way to go. Nobody apparently learned from fucking Nicky Scarfo. But I think that, and this is just my opinion, and people are going to disagree with me on this. I don't think John Stanfa was respected. You have to earn something. You have to be in Philadelphia. You have to rise the ranks. You have to be willing to do certain things. And when you just kind of arrive, you leave Philadelphia after Bruno gets hit, which if you think John Stanfa wasn't in on that, you're crazy. So he leaves, goes to New York, then gets sent back. That's disrespectful to the guys that have been in the foxholes, taking on everybody, taking on the FBI and doing stuff. So it's a disrespectful thing. And then Stanfa just sort of had an ilk for the younger guys coming up. And I think that was a very, very bad mistake. And a lot of people have argued between Stanfa, Merlino, and this kind of thing. But listen, if you believe, and once again, this is alleged, but it's Joey has stood the test of time. If the allegations are true that he's the boss of the mafia in Philadelphia, then you know what? You got to marvel at that. Because the guy, once again, if you believe the allegations, has been in control for 25 fucking years. And so all of this shit that people don't give him credit for in terms of street acumen or intelligence, the guy's fucking intelligent. He's no dummy. Believe me, he's no dummy. So as far as the Gingellini brothers go, listen, some people are going to be with the youth movement. Some people are going to go with old school, and guys get caught in the crossfire. It's sad that a family can be ripped apart by that kind of stuff, but I don't know if you're ever going to get a complete... I don't think I could ever give you a complete answer to that. All right. If the rumors were true that Vinny DeCavalcante wanted John Gotti dead as a result of the Paul Castellano hit, who do you think would win a war between the Gambinos and Genoveses? Okay, well, one, the rumors were not true that Vinny the Chin wanted to clip Gotti. That's just bullshit. I think I've been on the record as talking about that a ton of times, saying that that's bullshit. It's also bullshit that Gaspipe Casso was given the order. Gaspipe had an issue with Angelo Ruggiero. We've discussed that. There's so many myths and so many rumors that just aren't true, and this is why I do what I do. I just try to tell you what the real deal is. But first of all, there would never be a war between the Gambinos and Genoveses. They're just, but thinking in that time period, I don't know. It's hard to say because the Gambinos during the 80s were a very, very tough group, but they still are today. And the Genoveses, the same thing. I really don't know. And then the bigger question out of that would be, does the Luccheses and the Colombos get sucked into that, and the Bonannos as well? And where would they side? So I think the bigger question is if they went to war, who would go where, why, and what? And it would never lead to that. It just brings too much heat. But between the two of them at the time period, I think that the Gambinos were more deadly. But I could, like I said, I could be absolutely 100% wrong about that. But I base my opinion based on some people that I know. I think the Gambinos were just, at the time, Vinny the Chin had them kind of sitting back, being quiet, but both sides would pick up a gun. So, I don't know. Maybe that's a good poll question. If you follow me on Twitter, @RealMobTalk7, shoot me a tweet or inbox me and tell me, who do you think would win a war between the Gambinos and the Genoveses in the 1980s, like right around the Paul Castellano hit, which was December of 1986. Okay, moving on. Why do you think Frank Sheeran wasn't killed off with all the stuff he knew and all the stuff he was involved in? Very simple. He was very close to Russell Bufalino. Bufalino trusted him implicitly. Frank never talked until the last couple of days he was alive, so we know that. And I think that the reality is when you totally trust somebody, he was very valuable to a lot of different people. He was valuable to Philadelphia. He was valuable to Jimmy Hoffa. He was valuable to the Chicago outfit. He was valuable to the New York mob. He killed Gallo for the mob, and the list just goes on. He killed Hoffa for the mob. The list just goes, and then, Tony Provenzano, he's tight with them. He's tight with the guys, the Zarellis in Detroit. So I think that when you are that important and you're not giving them a reason to execute you and you're not giving them a reason to hurt you, then you sort of survive. I admit, looking at the question sort of the way it's structured, I don't get it either. I would have thought he would have known too much. Whereas in comparison, you look at somebody like Johnny Roselli, who got whacked and put in a fucking drum and thrown in Biscayne Bay for everything that he knew. But Frank wasn't reckless either. Frank wasn't getting indicted. Frank wasn't giving interviews. Frank wasn't writing a book. Frank minded his own fucking business. And I think that's a lot of the reason why he survived that time period. All right. If the Cubans had decided to go to war with the Gambinos over the whole situation with Chris Rosenberg, 1, were the Gambinos strong enough to take them on? 2, would other families have stuck their necks out and helped the Gambinos? 3, would DeMeo have stood and fought or run? If the Colombians had gotten involved, could the American Mafia have gotten assistance from the Sicilian Mafia? That's a big, big question. Now, first of all, if you don't understand the first part, which is about the Cubans and the Gambinos, Chris Rosenberg, who was in the DeMeo crew, actually assassinated and robbed some Cuban cartel members, and the Cuban cartel guys were really fucking pissed. So pissed they were threatening to kill everybody. They requested from Roy DeMeo that Chris Rosenberg be killed and that it be front page news, and they wanted to do it themselves, but Roy would not give them that satisfaction. So what they ended up doing was getting a car and pumping it full of bullet holes and sending that to them, saying that that effectively was Chris Rosenberg's body, and the Cubans didn't buy it. So Roy started getting very, very, very paranoid. And there was a vacuum cleaner salesman that ended up parking outside of Roy's house, and Roy, because he looked Hispanic, Roy put one and one together and thought, oh my God, this is a Cuban hitman. Turns out it was just a college kid trying to earn a few extra dollars. And Roy DeMeo grabs a gun with Dracula Guglielmetti, and they end up chasing this guy all the way through Brooklyn, firing shots, and they eventually kill the kid. It was a huge fucking problem, a huge fucking mistake. Paul Castellano was absolutely fucking infuriated, and that should have sealed Roy DeMeo's fate right then and there. The fact that you're having a shootout like the Wild Wild fucking West through Brooklyn, from Staten Island to Brooklyn, that's fucking ridiculous. That should have gotten DeMeo killed, but it didn't. And at the end of the day, I don't think the Cubans ever would have completely gone to war with the entire mafia. I think that they would have been satisfied with just killing DeMeo. I don't think they would have overreached. I also don't think that DeMeo would have stood and fought with them. I think he would have taken off. And I can say that confidently by his actions with the vacuum cleaner, the vacuum cleaner salesman. I don't think any of the other mob families would have gotten involved in this. In fact, they would have run from it. We're not getting involved in this. And the fact that Paul Castellano a lot of the mob guys were very, very, very upset by this. Not just because an innocent kid was killed, but they didn't like the idea of cartel members pretty much saying they were going to execute anybody they thought was involved. And it created a real problem. And in this, at the end of the day, I just don't think anybody else would have gotten involved. They probably would not have made a call to Toto Rina or any of these other guys or Baldamenti over in Sicily. It just wouldn't have happened. They wouldn't have gotten them involved. And the Sicilian mob wouldn't have gotten involved in that to begin with. All right, is Jackie the Nose D'Amico still alive? Yes, he is. He is in his 80s. Okay, this is a really good question. I've been waiting for a long time to get this one. All right, I heard Tony Sirico, a.k.a. Paulie Walnuts from The Sopranos, was a real gangster before getting into acting. Do you know this to be true? And who are some other actors who turned into gangsters or vice versa? Tony Sirico was a legit guy in the 70s. He was a notorious stick-up guy. He was arrested 28 times, served 2 bits in prison for weapons charges and armed robbery, and he was a very, very, very big, quick-rising associate under Carmine Persico. So Tony Sirico absolutely was legitimately on his way to being an inducted member of the mob. But I guess when he was in prison, he decided that that's not the life he wanted to live anymore, and he sort of became an actor. Another guy, Alex Rocco. Now, if you don't know who Alex Rocco is, he played Mo Green in The Godfather 2. He played in Cannonball Run. He was in all kinds of different movies. He always seems to play like the tough guy and the mob guy. So that being said, his real name was Alessandro Petricone, and he was born in Massachusetts, and he was actually involved in the Winter Hill Gang. There was an incident where Rocco was dating a girl, and basically George McLaughlin hit on Rocco's girlfriend. And essentially this started a massive fucking war, which led to the Boston Irish Gang War in the 1960s. Basically, after McLaughlin hit on Rocco's girlfriend, the Winter Hill Gang beat the living tar out of this fucking guy. To make matters more interesting, Alex Rocco's nickname in the mob was Bobo, and he was arrested in 1961 along with Winter Hill Gang member Buddy McLean for questioning in the murder of Bernie McLaughlin of the Charlestown mob. Rocco would be released. He would flee to California, and then he would legally, obviously, change his name to Alex Rocco. All right, Lenny Montana. A lot of people may not recognize that name. Do you recognize Luca Brasi? I think you do. Lenny Montana, who played Luca Brasi in The Godfather, was actually a leg breaker for the Colombo crime family in the 1970s. And he was also an arsonist, and that's pretty much the extent of that. Tony Darrow, if you don't know who Tony Darrow is, his real name is Anthony Borghese. He was in Goodfellas, The Sopranos. He owned the Rio Bamba Lounge, or the Bamboo Lounge in Goodfellas. He's been seen in a lot of films. His stage name is Tony Darrow, and he was arrested in 2011 for extortion. And basically what happened is, and I'm going to use his real last name, Borghese essentially lent a hand to the Gambino crime family attempting to extort somebody, which turned brutally violent. Ultimately, an informant would end up taping Borghese, and he would plead guilty to extortion. The victim's jaw and ribs were broken, and it was over money owed to a car dealership in upstate New York. And I could go on for hours and hours and hours and hours about the guys that that are in the acting world that have ties or et cetera, et cetera. Okay. How big were the DeCavalcante crime family in comparison to other families? Did the other families hold them in any regard? Okay. One of the things that was portrayed in The Sopranos was the way that New York looked down on New Jersey. I don't know if it's exactly like that, but I think for anybody to think that Sam the plumber was some guy that had all this kind of control is a little bit stretching the facts. I don't want to say that they were the redheaded stepchild either. But the problem, I think, is, once again, we go back to the first question, which I think I was from Kyrie Pilgrim, is that you're talking about territory, turf, and et cetera, et cetera. But just looking at the facts, between 1999 and 2005, 45 members of the New Jersey DeCavalcante crime family were sent away, including the consigliere and 7 capos. New York, since then, has officially or essentially swallowed up what rackets were left in North Jersey. By 2015, 10 members and associates were arrested on conspiracy to commit murder and distribution of narcotics. It's believed, at least from my sources, they have 40 to 60 members and around 100 associates. I'm not really sure if it's that high. I think membership is closer to like 35, and they probably have 40 associates, but the intermingling between North Jersey and Philadelphia is going to be a problem. And I say that because of the indictments that came out of Jersey just a couple of months ago with this bullshit with Anthony Pergiano, the fucking rat that he is, and some other guys. And so I think that it's going to be interesting moving forward to see how many of the DeCavalcantes are involved in that indictment. I don't know if they are or not. I just know that, people operate in certain circles, and that's the reality of it. But I don't think that the DeCavalcantes can survive another huge indictment. They just can't. And that's the reality. All right. What do you know about Ciro DiPaggio, a.k.a. Mike White? All right. Here's what I can say about Ciro. I have talked to him multiple times. A couple times, I think, once on the phone and a couple times over Messenger. He seems like a decent guy, nice guy. A very, very, he's a tough guy. And I think that if you don't know who he is, look him up. You can type Ciro DiPaggio. You can also look up Mob King. He's the actor and the producer of Mob King. And he's got a bunch of other shows that are coming out. This is a guy that did a lot of time in prison, got out, and decided to chase, something other than the street life. He's become incredibly successful, and I think he is the model for what some guys should do. When you do a lot of time, I think that in retrospect, I think certain people learn from it and say, you know what, this is no good for me. I got to do something different. But that's like 1.1% of the 199.1% or 99.9% that just go right back to the streets. Other than that, I think his projects look really cool. I think he sort of has a different way of looking at organized crime in general, and I think he has a special way of filming it, and he has a special way of telling a story. So from that perspective, I think what Ciro's doing is fantastic. I've got no complaints. He's a very nice guy, and he is the type of guy who will help you if you need help. I can't say enough about him. I can't say anything negative about the guy. So if you're unfamiliar with who Ciro DiPaggio is, do yourself a favor and go on Facebook and type in Mob King. Go to YouTube, type in Mob King, and see it for yourself. And reach out to him and tell him Jeff Canarsie sent you. All right, that being said, by the way, Ciro, if you're listening to this, give me a call. I need to ask you about something. All right, if the movie A Bronx Tale is true, who is the real Sonny, and who did he belong to, and did he have a sidekick, Jimmy Whispers? First of all, the Bronx Tale is absolute bullshit. Anybody that believes that that's a fucking true story is mental. Listen, while I can certainly respect Chaz Palminteri in many ways as an actor, there's been too many things that have sort of conflicted with that story. I'm not saying that it's all untrue. I'm just saying A Bronx Tale is a fucking movie. It's that simple. It's a movie. I think that multiple times Chaz Palminteri has said that it was biographical. Then other times he was saying it was based on the streets in the Bronx. I don't buy it. I don't buy the story. In fact, I'll go one step further. I don't even like A Bronx Tale. And I think, and it doesn't have to do with it doesn't have to do with the acting. It doesn't have to do with the storyline, because I think the storyline is great. I see so much social media, people posting these fucking memes from A Bronx Tale with, oh, she opened the fucking the door lock, she's a keeper. It's nonsense. It's a fucking movie. It's a movie. It's a fucking movie. And I think a lot of people, and I don't want to get off on a rabbit trail because I'm going to be here all day if I do this, but I think that people have a very hard time distinguishing a fucking movie from actual real shit. Listen, there's a lot of people online, there's a lot of people on social media, they're going to say they're related to this person or they're related to that person, they're the illegitimate child of this person or that person. They're full of shit. They're liars. They have mental problems, and they want you to believe that there's somebody based how to say this? They want you to believe that they're tough guys and they're this and they're that based on somebody else's reputation. And I can't say this enough times. And I'm going to keep hitting on it till somebody finally registers. Who you are in this life has not a goddamn thing to do with who your grandfather was, who your uncles are, who your second cousin was, who your mother's husband 3 times removed. Listen. Who you are is based on your reputation, what you do. You can't walk into a bar saying, you know who my uncle is? That's a pussy thing to do. People will respect you because of your pedigree, but you have to be that person. So let me just say this, and this is so off where this question is going, but I want to make a point very, very, very clear. Anybody who is online that tells you they're in the mafia is full of shit. Anybody who tells you they're in the mafia and they're on a rat page talking to rats, calling rats friends, is full of shit. They're liars. And I don't know what makes these people... First of all, if you're a street guy, what the fuck are you doing on social media to begin with? Second of all, why are you making videos screaming all this shit that we all know isn't true? That's been verified to be not true. It's like, I don't get it. Like, why would you want to, if you're a made guy or whatever, first of all, why would you even say you're a made guy on social media? That means you're a jerk off. Because that's what that is. It's a lie. It's a jerk off. Like, why would you want to bring that heat on you? I just don't understand it. And that's what a lot of you need to see and understand for yourself. First of all, I'm going to tell you some facts. The first fact is made guys aren't going to tell you they're made guys. Okay? Second of all, guys that are in the mafia aren't going to be making videos and writing fake articles about themselves being gangsters. Because it's not true. Think about the audacity of that. So I'm going to quote somebody I know, Joey Merlino, because he said it to me before. These people are all fucking crazy. They're all nuts. They're all fucking whack jobs. And that's true. And what he was talking about was I was ribbing him about some of these people online. Listen, you are who you are. But there's a lot of fakes out there. And they will have you believe all kinds of shit because for whatever reason, they don't like who they are. And they think acting like a gangster, or they think lying constantly. Meanwhile, they're threatening other people like they're a gangster. It's ridiculous and it's nonsense. And so people really need to stop buying into that bullshit. Listen, you really think a gangster is going to like fucking friend request you? You think a gangster is going to message you and say, yeah, I was the youngest made guy ever in the Lucchese crime family? You're a dumb fuck and you're a liar. That's my point. And I'm not like singling one guy out because there's a bunch of them that do this shit. But it's like, it's garbage. It's garbage. Now, as a result of me saying that, now they're going to keep threatening me because that's what they do. They're all jerk offs. They don't have any common sense. And I really didn't even want to like broach this subject because it's just going to bring so much backlash. But the truth is, people are full of shit. People are full of shit. If you live on the streets, the street code, you don't talk about people, you don't hang out with rats, you don't associate with rats, you don't talk about being made, you don't talk about crimes. There's these motherfuckers that talk about all of this shit online. I'm a made guy, yeah, and I know this guy and that guy, and I met John Gotti like one day before he went to fucking prison, and I sat on his lap, and he told me I was his nephew. It's ridiculous. It's fucking ridiculous. People want to be something so fucking bad, but they can't fucking make it on their own, so they have to use like what I like to call ladders. They got to get on the step stool and be related to this one or that one to make themselves tough. It's nonsense, so stop believing it. All right. Who's more dysfunctional, the Bonannos or the Colombos? I think oh shit. You're trying to get me killed with this question. Who's more dysfunctional, the Bonannos or the Colombos? You know what? I don't know if it's necessarily dysfunctional or whether it's just proprietary in the sense of they keep getting arrested. Listen, the Bonannos are on the rebound. Don't get it twisted. Of the two, if I had to pick a time period, this would be easy. But I think you're talking in today's time period, dysfunctional. I think the Colombos are. That's just my opinion. You don't hear much about them, but that doesn't mean they're not dysfunctional. Bonannos continuously keep having problems with guys getting arrested. So maybe in the sense of that, if I were to judge it on that, I would say the Bonannos. But I don't know. Can we pick somebody else, please? How about the Funzi crime family? You guys are trying to get my legs broken with these questions. All right. Was Neil Dellacroce a member of Murder, Inc.? Yes, he was. He was a hitman for Murder, Inc., and Dellacroce really was the antithesis of a gangster through and through. He got his start in the Mangano crime family in the 30s, and he would end up becoming a protege of Albert Anastasia. And as Albert Anastasia sort of takes over, he made Dellacroce a capo and gave him his own crew. Then we know the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club comes along. Listen, Dellacroce was completely loyal to Anastasia, and when Anastasia got hit in 1957, which was a coup set up by Tommy Lucchese, by the Luccheses, the Genoveses, and the Gambinos, he sort of held his nose at it, but he refused to seek retribution because he believed that the boss is the boss is the boss, and you need to be loyal to whomever is charged. They don't make men like him anymore. I can tell you that for a fucking fact. The fact that he would have been sort of in his right to an extent to be angry about his friend and his boss getting killed, but he didn't. He went right along with what was supposed to happen. Now, I know what the fucking Gotti haters are going to say to me next. Well, what would he have thought of him killing Paul Castellano? I think he knew he was going to do it. He just didn't want it done on his watch. And that's the reality of it. I don't want to go too deep into that. Okay. Let's see. What's the most surprising place the mob has had influence? Place or racket? Virginia Beach. A lot of people don't understand this, but Virginia, first of all, Carlo Gambino came in through Norfolk, Virginia, the seaport. All right. The second thing is he owned every fucking longshoremen's union on the eastern seaboard. What a lot of people don't know is that there were massive gambling dens, rackets as far as drugs, narcotics, gambling all throughout Virginia Beach in the early fucking 20s, the 30s, 40s, and beyond the 50s and 60s. The Aragona family was big into that. The Giordano family was big into that. Eddie Garcia, who a lot of people from that area will know, was the biggest drug trafficker in the area for the time. It was just, a lot of people think that for the southern states don't have mob-controlled things, but they do. In fact, Tommy Del Giorno was living in Virginia Beach. He wasn't the only one. That seemed to be a good relocation center for these fucking jerk-offs. Tommaso Buscetta was living in Croatan in Virginia Beach. So, which, if you don't know Virginia Beach, Croatan is like a very upscale, very, very wealthy area at the north end of the beaches. Yes, I lived in Virginia Beach. Like, that's no secret. I don't know why that continues to be like this fucking argument point from these jerk-offs who don't know anything. I lived there for a while, absolutely. All right. How did Chicago outfit get its name, the outfit? By the clothes that they wore. It's that simple. Look at him. He's wearing the outfit. That's basically where it comes from. All right. Do smaller families, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and etc., have an association to the five families in this day and age? I'm going to say yes, but no. I say that because Pittsburgh's pretty much done. Cleveland, they don't report to the New York families, but there's always contacts, there's always scheming, there's always this going on and that going on. So from that aspect, they do definitely have an association, but they don't have to answer to people either. Do they have higher ups who represent them on the commission? If you go back a couple of shows, I actually talked about who represents who in the grand scheme of things when it comes to the commission. Blah, blah, blah. Let's see what else we got over here. How effective are bosses that go to prison but choose to stay boss? Do they still have power of boss, or is it more ego? I'm not exactly understanding the question, but I think what you're aiming at is Carmine Persico. Listen, there's a reason why Carmine Persico has remained the boss for all his time behind the wall. It's because he's feared and he's respected. It has nothing to do with fucking ego. If you're the boss of a crime family, just because you go in the can doesn't mean you have to give anything up. You're the boss for a reason, and Carmine has been the boss of the crime family forever and a day. So I don't think it's ego. It's just that's what they do, and they do have power. They still have a shitload of power behind the wall. Maybe not, and it all really comes down to who they have on the outside that truly respects them, and who they have on the outside that truly has regard for them in the sense of they'll pick up a gun and do whatever they're told. All right, let's see. What do we got here? Okay. Galante got whacked by the Bonannos. Vincent, Albert, and Big Paul by the Gambinos, an attempt on Costello by the Genoveses. Are the Luccheses the only one who haven't attempted to kill a boss, or how did they manage to keep their bosses from getting whacked? Rather than answer this like in a long diatribe, Maranzano Masseria got whacked by Luciano, Gambino crime family, Angelo Bruno. Vincent Gigante was in on that, despite what a lot of people are going to say otherwise. Frank Costello, Vito Genovese tried to kill him, along with Vinny Gigante, Paul Castellano, John Gotti, and all the families were involved in that. Albert Anastasia, Tommy Lucchese, Vito Genovese, and Carlo Gambino were in on that, so you can't say the Luccheses never were involved, because of course they were. And this is going to be sort of a statement that I want to make. And I think that this is, let me look really quick. Yeah, this is the last question I have. So let me make this statement like absolutely unequivocally clear. I've made it before, and I've been getting a couple of questions on this every once in a while. All right, let me propose the question first. If it was okay and acceptable, hold on. If it was okay and acceptable for Carlo Gambino to kill Albert Anastasia, why isn't it acceptable for John Gotti to kill Paul Castellano? Do you think Carlo Gambino had the permission to do that? No, because Gambino was the underboss at the time. So, or the consigliere at the time. So think about that. How is that right? So look at Luciano, who ends up really taking care of Maranzano and Joe the boss Masseria. It was okay for Luciano to do that. So I'm going to make this argument because I'm sick of hearing it. I am in no way, shape, or form a Gotti puppet. A lot of people like to make this claim, but it's not true. If you knew me and you had a conversation with me outside of this, you would understand my perspective. I'm not going to go into details about anything specifically, but what I can tell you is that I think that people have sort of a lopsided view, and I'm not talking about guys in the street, because to me, that's something different. I'm talking about the public. The public made John Gotti who John Gotti was. That hit in 1986. If that hit in 1986 never happens, and maybe John Gotti ascends the throne in a different way, he's not going to be the big fancy guy on every magazine cover. It's because that hit was so brazen so public, then, the reporters fall in love with him or whatever. But I don't understand that the argument that people make when they try to tell me that, one, John Gotti sought publicity. What do you want the guy to fucking do? You want him to, he has to go outside of his house. What's he going to be, like a fucking leper and sit in his fucking living room all goddamn day? He tried to sneak out the back. There were the reporters. So finally he said, fuck it. I got to go do stuff. I'm going out. It's not his fault the reporters stick cameras in his face. Elvis Presley had the same fucking... I'm not comparing the two, but I'm saying Elvis Presley had the same fucking problem. He couldn't go anywhere. The guy had to rent out a fucking amusement park because he couldn't go enjoy normal fucking things because the press is fucking nuts. Look at fucking Joey Merlino when he trial for New York. You got Dave Ratweiser won't leave him the fuck alone, and all these other news jerk-offs. Then they don't even write the fucking truth. So I don't want to get on a rabbit trail here, but the point I'm trying to make to you is, if you're going to say that it was okay for Carlo Gambino to do this and do that, then it's going to be acceptable for everybody else following him. It's just going to have to be. You cannot change the rules to fit your narrative because you have an opinion on somebody. You just can't. The reality is that this has been done in the entirety of the mob's existence. They kill to take over power. Bonanno tried to do it repeatedly. So if it's good for one, it's good for the other. This other argument that people have is that John Gotti brought down the mob in New York. Did he testify against anybody? No. That was Sammy Gravano, Philip Leonetti. That shitbag from fucking Philly didn't help either. Oh, wait, that's right, but it's Gotti's fault. It's Gotti's fault that Sammy testified, right? So listen, you don't have to like John Gotti. You don't have to you can have your opinion. I don't care what your opinion is. But what I'm saying is you cannot have a valid argument if you're unwilling to accept the fact that this has happened in the mafia since the mafia's inception. I don't see you saying that about Totorina, which he did the same fucking thing. So the reality is, and the point I'm really getting to is that the rules are the rules when they apply to certain people. That's the way the mob is. That's the way it's always going to be. You know what I mean? So it's not a favoritism thing. It's not he's this and he's a Gotti bitch and it's got nothing to do with that. Because I think I have been on the record as saying not so many good things about John Gotti at one point. I think he talked too much. I've said that before. I've been on the level. He talked too much. That's the reality. He got himself arrested by his mouth and then the testimony of somebody else. What he should have done is kill Gravano way before then. Then maybe you're not going to have that problem. But I'm just trying to make the point that don't put words in my mouth and listen to what I'm telling you. That's just my opinion. Don't believe guys that pretend to be in the life. Don't believe guys who have never met them. Don't believe guys who have a fucking narrative or a rat tail to sell you. They can't make money legitimately, so they're going to make up all this crazy shit. And that's just the reality of it. Anyway, all that being said, those are the questions. We're going to take a break here in a second and come back and do Tommy Eboli. So here's the deal. Reach out to me on Twitter at RealMobTalk7. Give us a follow. Send your death threats, which those are hilarious, complaints and etc. Right to the source. That's the other thing. I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to go to a break. And I shouldn't, but I'm going to. I debated whether I was going to even talk about this. Be men, not cowards. What does that mean? Be men, not cowards. First of all, I have a format and I have a platform where I can say pretty much whatever the fuck I want. I think that people that truly, one, know who I am outside of all this will tell you. Will fucking tell you. I'll say whatever I'm saying now right to your face. I've said it a million times. Not intimidated by anybody. There's a lot of shit talkers and a lot of bullshitters. However, when you sit on social media talking shit about everybody who, one, you don't know, B, you're making up lies and gossip about them, why don't you be a man and take it to the source? That's what I don't understand. If I got a problem, I go right to the source, unless they're fucking rats. Then I have no conversations with them. Because where's the validation? A couple of these guys say, oh, we're street guys, this, that, and the third. They're hanging out with a fucking rat. Like, how does that make sense on any fucking level? I'm going to go down to South Philly and I'm going to talk to this guy and he's going to say something about you. So what? First of all, you're not going to go into South Philly. That's the first thing. Two, go ahead and bring me up if you want. You think anybody's going to give a fuck about me? I'm nothing. I do a fucking show. You think this guy like Joey Bag of Donuts and Joey the Gorilla and whatever the fuck else moniker you want to come up, you think they're really going to give a fuck what I have to say? These guys got things to do. They got families, they got kids, they got work, they got whatever. So the idea that you sit on social media and you make this shit up and you try to like back yourself up by saying you went to see this guy and that guy when I know you didn't. Because one of the things that you idiots don't seem to understand is that if I tell you I know somebody, I know somebody. And if you think I didn't, like, make a call here and there to kind of find out what was true and what wasn't, then you'd be wrong. And I think the fact that you have to, like, make up lies and insert names, like, you're putting guys' names that have been profiled by that shitbag Ratweiser and that jerk-off gremlin Anastasia, you're putting guys' names in the context of your dialogue like, A, you know them, and like, B, you're saying things and threatening people using their names. How fucking stupid can you be? Like, when I was growing up, if I had a beef with Doug, guess what I did? I walked down the street, we beat the shit out of each other, and it's over. We're friends like a month later. We fight again 6 months after that. But grown men sitting on social media, bullying, name-calling, like making up the most absurd shit because nobody gives a fuck about them, because that's the reality, because they're nothing and they're nobodies. Like, what's the point? What's the point of that? And the fact that when you really look at it as a whole, and then I'm going to shut the fuck up. I really didn't want to go here. When you look at the context of what they're saying and why they're saying it, why are they saying it? Because they're in love with rats. They're defending a rat's honor. First of all, if you had any fucking scruples, you had any fucking backbone, you wouldn't be friends with a fucking rat to begin with. The second thing you wouldn't do is say you're a fucking street guy and then admit to hanging out with rats. Like, how stupid can one motherfucker be? The third thing is you keep making death threats, like, you're making threats to baseball bat me online. Like, how stupid are you? And then you turn around and go, oh, he's a cop caller. I've never called cops in my life. For any fucking reason. I think my criminal record speaks for itself. So, I don't get it. And the only reason why I'm bringing it up is because it's nonsense, and really, listen, and this is the absolute truth. Nothing they say bothers me. Really, honest to God. Nothing they say bothers me because it's bullshit, it's lies, and they're cowards because they do it from sitting on a computer. They're not going to say it to me. They keep threatening to come. Listen, I stand outside my apartment every day waiting. They never show up. I go to Philadelphia. I tell everybody where I am. They never fucking show up. I wish they would just once, because believe me, they're going to bite off more than they fucking bargained for with me. And I'm going to give you some friendly advice, and I'm going to a break. And this is the last time I am ever, swear to fucking God, last time I'm ever going to talk about this garbage and nonsense, is I want to say this. You can say what you want, you can do what you want, but I'm going to give you very, very, very big advice. Stop using people's names. You're going to get yourself hurt. Knowing somebody, Jimmy the Woman, Billy the Frog, whatever the fuck the names that you're using, because I'm not going to repeat them here because I have respect for those people. That's some of the names you're using. You don't mention somebody else's name on any social media platform and put them in a charge. You don't put them in what your version of baseball batting somebody up is, you don't put them in anything. You're talking about you're openly talking about assaulting people using their names. Like, that's a rat move. You're a fucking rat. You're a goddamn fucking rat, all of yous. And you're going to get yourselves hurt because you're putting names out there. And I'll gladly tell those people whose names you're using what you're doing. I got no beef telling them that. But you're going to put people that have no business being in your little shit show and your little fucking drama and your little gossip girls group. You got no business putting their names into this. So why don't you try being fucking adults and being men instead of gossip girls who are burning the bras together at the sleepover while you read the tabloids and you write little Mad Libs putting gangsta names in it because you're all jerk-offs and scumbags and nothings. You're nothing. Maybe that's what your problem is. You're nothing. Maybe if you were somebody, you wouldn't have to invent this whole entire fucking thing that you're a street guy. You're not a street guy. You're a fucking jerk-off. And a nothing. And nobody gives a fuck. You might have your 10, your 12, your 100 followers. And maybe it makes you feel good. It gives you a personality boost like, you've done something with your life. But you're nothing. You're nothing. You're nothing. So I just, the nonsense needs to stop. Move on with your fucking life. Be an adult. Take care of your kids and your wife. Stop playing internet roleplay gangsta. And mind your own fucking business. Last time I checked, whatever beef I had with one guy had nothing to do with 16 others. But that's the problem. That one guy needs all the help he can get because he's a jerk-off and a rat and a scumbag. Fuck. All right. All that being said, you know where to send your hate mail and your threats because I know that that's coming. And for future reference, this is, and I was already talking about this the other day, is that this is the last rant. I'm not openly discussing this beef bullshit with these jerk-offs ever again. This is it. This is the last thing. Once we move to the pay site in January, which is definitely going to happen, these little pricks aren't going to be able to join because I have a way to ensure that these rat groupies can't join because when you pay, you got to use your real name. And I'm not letting any of them on. Because they're jerk-offs and they're cancerous to mojo, they're cancerous to positive thoughts. People like that should just go fuck each other in the zoo all day. We'll charge admission. Watch the rats fuck. I don't know what else to say. But to my listeners who do listen to me loyally and who do appreciate what I do, I apologize to you for ranting as much as I do, but I just get sick of it. Listen, I've got 56 fucking pages of these jerk-offs talking shit, making threats, using guys' names in Philadelphia. Why don't you reach out past Philly? Is that the only person you know is one motherfucker in South Philly? They harass my family, they harass other people's families, they harass my ex-girlfriend. It's like it never fucking ends. It never ends with these guys. Listen, I do a radio show. That's it. That's all it ever is. So for the people that do listen, I know you're rolling your eyes at this point, probably fast forwarding to this point going, Jesus Christ, there this jerk off goes again, fucking ranting and raving. If you went through what I went through on a daily basis of this shit, you would understand where I'm coming from. But this is the last of it. It's not going to happen again. I got a lot of great things happening in my life right now, a lot of huge projects that are coming that people are not going to fucking believe, and that's going to infuriate the Rat Squad even more, because success breeds malcontent and hatred. It always will, and I am successful, and they just don't like it, and that's okay. You're entitled not to like me. You're entitled not to like what I do, but if you had any fucking gusto, you'd do it yourself, but you can't because you don't have the talent and you're not creative enough and you're just a jerk off and a rat. So all that being said, this is the last of the rants. Done, finished, fucking over with. And we move on with our life. I'm going to take a break, and when we come back, Tommy Eboli. In my travels, I'm always looking for a clothing brand that I feel like represents me. Anybody can go to a store and buy a t-shirt with a gimmick, but if you believe in 3 core values like I do, loyalty, honor, and respect, then look no further than Omerta brand clothing. You can catch them at omertamia.com, OMERTAMIA.com, with locations in Europe, California, Boston, Brooklyn, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Washington. They have a great clothing line with hats, shirts, sweatshirts, keychains, anything you might need, stickers. You want the rats to stop snitching? Go right out and get yourself a sticker. But if you want to live your life by the gentleman's code, look no further than Omerta brand clothing. And welcome back to Mob Talk Radio. Yes, we are going to get to Tommy Eboli here in 1 second. If you're gonna be a little confused by this part right here, and the reason why I say that to you is because this was recorded over 2 days, and a lot has transpired in 2 days. So the stuff that you heard prior to this was yesterday morning or the other night at like 3 o'clock in the morning. All right, so here's what we got, and this is why I'm adding this. I could probably do a whole entire show over this. I put it out yesterday. First of all, the Merlino docket dropped, the government's case dropped, and when I say that, the sentencing guidelines paperwork that gets turned into any sort of sentencing thing, there's sentencing guidelines. There's recommendations that the probation department brings. There's recommendations the government wants, and then there's Joey's rebuttal to everything that's going on. All that paperwork dropped, and I did a massive article which included court documents, which, I have the theory that J.R. Rubio is a scumbag rat fuck who just lied on the stand, and the evidence that I presented totally corroborates that thought process. You can go over to Facebook, type in Mob Talk Radio, you'll see links. The one of the articles is entitled Joey Merlino sentencing stuff, and it's a fucking joke. That's the first one. Then you're going to notice a second link, and it's to J.R. Rubio. And when I say that, this is what happened. So back when I was at the fucking trial, I remember Rubio sitting on the fucking stand. He's staring at me the whole fucking time. And this is no bullshit, no nonsense. Then I went home that day, and I sort of wrote an anti-Rubio article and why he was a horrible fucking witness for the government, and backed up everything with facts from wiretaps that they played, tape recordings they played, and just evidence. Not my opinion, but fucking evidence. And that day, after I put the article out, within hours, I get a tweet from someone calling themselves J.R. Rubio. You fucking slob, you fucking nothing, kissing Joey's ass, this, that, and the third, playing with all those guys, they're all jerk-offs. Okay, first of all, I didn't think it was him. I just didn't think he had access to social media. Then yesterday happens. I post this article, and within 20 minutes, I get a message from John Rubio. Now, it is J.R. Rubio. Apparently, he's not smart enough to get himself out of trouble, but he's smart enough to operate a phone and a computer system. Now, here's the thing. The first thing you need to know is I can't respond to a guy like that because he's a federal informant in WITSEC. If I respond to him, he goes right to the FBI and says, oh, he threatened me and this and that. Next thing you know, I get a charge with threatening a federal informant or a federal witness. So I didn't respond to him. However, what he did, and I posted screenshots of what he said to me on a very public page, ranting and raving how I made up lies and nothing that I said was true. And if I didn't, I need to stop blocking him and be a fucking man. First of all, you telling me I need to be a man when you're a fucking rat? That's hilarious to me. You're a scumbag, junkie, wife-beating fucking nothing. You failed on the fucking stand. All they got was gambling charges. So really, the validity of anything that you fucking say is retarded bullshit, and you're a fucking jerk off. That's the first thing. The second thing is, every single piece of evidence or every single thing that I posted in that article is true. It's evidence. It was admitted into court. It is public fact. So I don't know what his fucking problem is with facts. I guess it's because it makes him look like a complete jerk off. And it makes him look like the lying scumbag rat fuck that he is. And that's the truth. The guy is vile. 90 of 100 days he was unsupervised by the FBI. He robbed the Chris offshore gambling accounts and bought luxury cars. He deleted or misplaced certain recordings that he felt would make Joey look not guilty. So multiple FBI agents were fucking caught in misbehaving. They were caught in not doing their fucking jobs in this case. 2 were reprimanded. 1 was replaced, I believe. I could be wrong about that. So the idea here is he's angry because I'm telling the truth. First of all, if you're a fucking rat, all right, you go in, you tell him what you tell him. You don't have to do a long prison sentence. It's over for you. What the fuck you going to argue with me for? He doesn't like it because he knows he's a fucking rat. He knows he's a fucking liar, and he can't live with the shit that he fucking did. This is the same individual that sat on a fucking, and I'm going to use a filthy word, this is the same individual that sat on the motherfucking stand and said, yeah, that cocksucker, him, I would do anything to put him away. I hope he gets 40 fucking years. He was saying that about Joey Merlino while he was in prison. Meanwhile, this piece of shit rat fuck was already in negotiations with fucking George Anesthesia. That's right. You heard it right here. George Anesthesia was going to write the Rubio book. So stop the fucking nonsense. Don't threaten me. You're fucking nothing. And that's the point. And this is the only reason why I'm bringing this up is because I'm trying to explain to everybody listening how rats operate. First of all, there have been guys in the history of organized crime that have become informants. They do their job. Call it a hack job, but they go into court, they say what they need to say, and then they disappear and they go live their life. First of all, I don't respect any fucking rat. I don't respect anybody that tells on anybody, but just for the sake of this argument, if a guy goes in, he tells his story, he withers away, who gives a fuck? But for some reason, these fucking rats can't stop the narrative after it's over. You didn't get Joey locked up for 30 years. You failed on every fucking level. 12 fucking jurors didn't fucking believe you. So shut the fuck up already and do yourself a favor and put 2 in your fucking head in the field somewhere, you jerk off. I just get fed up with the fucking rats. And I know I said right before this I wasn't going to rant no more about nothing, but that's the point. This is what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. So, J.R. Rubio, if you listen to this show, you're a fucking vile scumbag prick fuck. And you get whatever fucking nasty karma's coming your way because you're a rat, you're a nothing, and you're a jerk-off. So why don't you go cry a river and play your little fucking midget fiddle somewhere else, you fucking pest. Jerk-off, vermin, cunt. Ugh. All right, so that being said, I apologize for the filthy words. If you have kids, like I said, I apologize for that. But I'm not going to take that shit. All right, moving on to one more thing, and then we're going to the main show here. All right, so a question that I got on the show was about Ciro DiPaggio and what I thought about him and et cetera. And I answered it as basic as I could. However, I am going to announce something. And that's probably part of the reason why I didn't say a whole lot about him was because I didn't know how much I could say. But I have been working on a project called The Flanagans for a couple of years. It's an Irish mob drama that takes place in Boston and in Rhode Island. And I was somewhat in, I guess you could call it negotiations with Ciro DiPaggio, who is in Mob King. And he's got a lot of other projects going on. We were sort of discussing maybe doing it. I wasn't sure really if that was A, good enough. B, I wasn't sure if that was something that he was sort of interested in. So we debated for a few days. We pulled in another producer as well. And it's been greenlit. The Flanagans is a go. And Ciro DiPaggio will be playing the lead, and there's a couple of people. Seth Nicoletti's going to be in it. I'm hoping to be in a little bit of it. I'm going to be writing it along with some other people. It's going to be a fantastic show. It's going to be fucking a hell of a fucking roller coaster ride. We start shooting, I believe January, maybe February in Boston and probably in Providence as well. So listen, guys, here's something I want to say. Ciro DiPaggio didn't have to fucking communicate with me because here's the thing. People kept going to him saying nasty shit about me because of this fucking the beef war that's on social media and etc. He's a good guy. He's a stand-up guy. He says what he fucking means. He likes me. He likes where I come from. And we have a mutual respect for one another. We have a mutual respect for the craft that he's involved in and the process. So I am very proud to announce that the Flanagans is going to be a reality. I can't tell you any more than that right now, other than to say we start shooting in January. I'm looking really forward to it. And Ciro, if you're listening, thank you. I really appreciate it. He's a great guy, a stand-up guy, an honest guy. And he didn't have to fucking work with me on any level, considering what he's been told about me. But he's a man, he's a stand-up guy, and what he did was he simply reached out to me, and we had a conversation about some things that were being said. And he learned very quickly that the people that are saying all this crazy shit don't know me. They have no clue who I am. He is like me. I don't judge a book by its cover. I try to get to know people for who they are, and that's what he did. And now we have a huge project, a big, huge fucking project that's going to be absolutely fucking nuts. I can't wait to get started on it. I'm very excited, but none of it could have happened without Ciro DiPaggio being involved. And yes, of course, the haters are going to come out in droves now and say, oh, he's working with the Mob Talk guy. Listen, when you're good at what you do, you have a creative talent. Sometimes personalities can conflict, but not in this situation. He's a good guy, a stand-up guy, and I have nothing but respect for the guy. The guy did a shitload of time in prison, didn't fucking drop a dime on anybody, took a fucking charge like a man, did his time, got out, and look what he's done with his life. Look at what he has done with his life since. That's a fucking role model for people. You can do stupid shit when you're young, and then you can grow into an adult and make life changes. And that's what life is all about. Don't believe these rats that do all this time in fucking prison come out and say, yeah, I'm a reformed fucking guy, and they're just breaking the laws left and right. Ciro DiPaggio is the real deal. So, if you don't know who he is, go to Facebook and type in Ciro DiPaggio and look up Mob King. You can go on YouTube. There's a couple of things up there. Reach out to him. Say hello. Tell him you're a fan. Ask him questions. Tell him Jeff Canarsie sent you. He's a good guy. He's very, what's the word I'm looking for? He's just a normal guy. So, don't get fooled into thinking, oh, he's not going to talk to me. He's this, he's that. He's a pretty open guy. So do yourself a favor and reach out. Say hello. Like the Mob King. Check the Mob King out on Facebook. And I think that's just about it. As more information comes out, I'll talk more about the show and stuff that's coming along with that. But right now, we're just in the green light stages where everything's getting set up, getting ready. Got a producer on board, going to do some casting. And we're going to Boston. Going to Boston and having a good time. Good fucking time. It is going to be sort of... and I say this loosely because it likely will go through a couple of different incarnations, but it's loosely sort of a combination between the Westies meets the Sopranos, and there's a lot of family dynamic to it. It's got things in it that I don't think publicly have ever been talked about or shown on TV before. So it's going to be incredible, and I'm just so proud of it. And I'm proud to call Ciro a friend, and obviously, Seth Nicoletti's my cousin. So, I just appreciate everybody's input, and I appreciate, everybody tuning in every week. So that being said, we look forward to a bright future, and I'm not going to let these guys continue to control any narrative on my show. It's done and over with. All right, so now that we're at the hour and 47 mark, and you guys are probably fucking screaming, going, shut the fuck up already and get to Tommy Eboli, that's exactly what we're going to do. All right, Tommy Eboli was born June 13th, 1911 in Naples, Italy. There's a lot of stuff about his childhood and his youth that isn't really known. So if you're looking for a 9-page, a 10-page dissertation on Tommy Eboli, you're not going to get that just because there's limited information. But in his youth, like I said, there wasn't a whole lot known, but he worked as a professional boxer for a bit of a time, called himself Tommy Ryan. That was a common thing back in the days. The Italians were not very well liked, and it was much easier to give yourself an Irish surname to sort of just kind of mix in with a lot of people, and that's why he went by that name for a long time. In the 1920s, during Prohibition, Tommy became a bootlegger for Lucky Luciano. By the 1930s, he would become Vito Genovese's personal bodyguard. And then in 1933, Tommy would be arrested 6 times for gambling. Also during the 1930s and the 1940s, Eboli would become a boxing manager, and a notorious one at that. One of his early boxing talents actually was Vincent the Chin Gigante, who was a professional boxer for a brief time. In 1952, Eboli had an incident with boxing officials. It's a pretty well-known case or a fact, so to speak, and I don't know if you guys know about it, but we're going to talk about it a little bit. There was a fight at Madison Square Garden, and Tommy Eboli was a boxing manager. What ends up happening is he ends up physically assaulting two prominent officials. At the time, Tommy was managing middleweight slugger Ernie Durando, and Durando, what happened was Durando knocked down another boxer named Castellani in both the 6th and the 7th rounds, but the referee, Ray Miller, stopped the fight and handed or awarded a technical knockout to Durando. Eboli entered the ring and knocked Miller the fuck out. He then went into Castellani's locker room and beat a guy by the name of Al Weil, or maybe it's pronounced Well or Wheel. We'll go Al Wheel with the butt end of a gun. Al Wheel was actually a boxing promoter, and later on, reporters and everything claimed that the reason why this happened was because there was supposed to be a fix-in. Wheel had already been paid off to ensure victory over Durando, and that's not what Tommy agreed to, so he went a little fucking haywire in the locker room and beat the piss out of a guy with the butt end of a gun. In January of 1952, Tommy would be indicted on 2 counts of assault and criminal intent from the boxing fiasco. In May of that year, he would plead guilty to reduced charges and would be sentenced to 60 days in prison, which I might add would be the only sentence that he would ever serve. As a result of those charges and the sentence following the charges, the New York State Athletic Commission would ban Tommy from boxing for life. In 1957, which was a big year because Appalachian happened and all these other things, but in the instance of what we're discussing, Vito Genovese officially becomes boss of what is now the Genovese crime family, and he elevates Tommy to a captain. He then hands the Greenwich Village crew to Tommy, which was a notorious crew. Eventually, Vinny the Chin would take over that crew, but for the topic and what we're talking about, that's just how it was. Tommy had his hand in a lot of rackets, including construction, loan shark and unions, gambling, and etc. He took a lot of the profits from his rackets and opened several legit businesses. He opened nightclubs. He was one of the first people to open up gay bars. Carlo Gambino also did that too as well. That was a big moneymaker for them at the time. And in that day and age in 1957, that was something that just was not talked about openly. It was something that the weirdos did. And they needed a place to go, and the mob kind of realized that, and so they opened up a lot of gay bars, and they opened those in Midtown and Lower Manhattan, and they made a lot of money. Tommy also had an iron grip on the rackets on the Hudson River docks. He parlayed his money into the Jet Music Corporation, which was a jukebox supplier, and anybody who had a jukebox in Manhattan at the time had to get one of Tommy's machines. If they didn't, they were forced to take it. He also owned the Tyron Cigarette Vending Services, who at the time operated cigarette machines and cigarettes in general. He also was a cigarette smuggler. So, like I said, you own a fucking cigarette vending machine, you're smuggling cigarettes, everything is on the up and up, and he made a lot of money doing that. On April of 1959, Vito Genovese would be sentenced to 15 years in federal prison on narcotics charges. Now, we have talked about these narcotics charges before and who was behind that. And that was a direct sort of shot from Carlo Gambino. And just a really quick sort of backdrop to that is that Genovese had wanted to become boss. He effectively tried to push Luciano out of the way. Then he tried to have Costello killed. Costello eventually sees what's going on and says, you know what I was shot at? I'm going to retire. And Genovese sort of takes over. But the agreement was that between him and Carlo Gambino that here's the deal. I'm going to help you kill Anastasia. I'll accept it. I'll go along with it. Then you take over as boss. Then I'm going to try to hit Costello, and I'm going to be boss. We'll both be bosses. And the argument that he made to Carlo was, listen, you're at the age you're at. Anastasia's a relatively young guy. By the time you get to take over, you're going to be an old man, and you're missing out on your opportunity. And Carlo agreed. But the one thing that Carlo did that was different was he never trusted Genovese. And then the Appalachian thing happens, and Genovese wanted to be recognized as bosses. He wanted everybody to recognize and kiss his ass. And it got everybody pinched. They always blamed Vito Genovese for Apalachin. They always did, and that would come back to haunt Genovese, and that's exactly what happened. Genovese starts a narcotics operation, and somebody dropped a dime. I'm not saying it was Carlo Gambino, but someone pretty much dropped a dime to the DEA, and when Genovese went to go pick up the drug shipment, which I have no fucking idea why he was doing it himself, he's met with a shitload of police. And that effectively rendered Genovese out of the fucking way and not a problem for Gambino, because Gambino realized that there was always going to be a rivalry between him and Genovese, and he was trying to stop it from getting to a point where he would have to act in a sort of murderous kind of way. Genovese goes to federal prison on narcotics charges, and what he does is he leaves Tommy Eboli in charge as acting boss. That he leaves him in charge as boss. Then what Tommy does, is he makes Jerry Catania the underboss. He makes Mike Miranda the consigliere. Anthony Strollo then becomes Tommy's right-hand guy, the go-to guy for problems. So all that being said, Strollo becomes Eboli's right-hand man, his close confidant, his direct ally, his biggest supporter. Tommy, even while the acting boss could not, even though he was the boss, he couldn't make decisions all on his own. Genovese had set it up for a panel. Decisions were made by a ruling panel consisting of Tommy, Catania, Miranda, with Philip Lombardo giving his opinion as well. So we've seen this before in organized crime. When a boss goes away, sometimes they'll put in a panel who will make decisions. That way there isn't an issue for a power grab or a power vacuum. That's the way it's been done for a long time with a lot of different families. February 4th of 1969, Vito Genovese ends up dying in prison, which creates a massive power struggle. Tommy should have been the natural successor. However, Tommy had a lot of health issues, was under FBI and state investigations. July 23rd, he would actually suffer his third heart attack of that year. He had 3 heart attacks in 1 year. He rightfully probably should have retired, but he ended up recovering. His second heart attack happened on July 17th, 2 days after appearing before the New Jersey State Investigation Committee in hearings on organized crime. His first heart attack actually happened at the New York State Investigation Committee meeting, obviously investigating organized crime. So what happens when you have 3 heart attacks like that? First of all, you're lucky to live from one, but it signals to the mob that he's weak. Listen, and when I say weak, just because you have an ailment doesn't make you weak, but he's having these attacks at these hearings, and it starts to worry guys in the mob a lot, because if he can't handle the pressure, is he the type of guy that might talk? And it just, like I said, he appeared just too weak to other bosses. So with Tommy sick, Jerry Catania becomes the new official boss. But soon after, Catania would end up getting indicted and jailed in 1970. With Catania in prison, Tommy becomes officially the boss of the Genovese crime family, despite outside pressure from the Luccheses and the Gambinos trying to get him to step down. Tommy, your health, just step down, knock it off already. The Luccheses, okay. In reality, however, even though Tommy was recognized as official boss, it was sort of a ruse. And the reason why I say that is because in reality, it was Philip Lombardo and Mike Miranda who were actually splitting the official boss duties, and they sort of pushed Tommy out front to be the front boss. Now, we've seen this really from the Genovese crime family. They're really unique in the extent that I think that they were really the first ones to kind of do this front boss shit. And it makes sense. Tommy's sick. We'll give him the title, but secretly, you and me are going to run things and we'll just put him out there. He's sick. If anybody gets pinched, it's going to be him. For the next 2 years, Tommy continued to act as the front boss. And Tommy has a problem. First of all, he's sick, and he also knows that other bosses really don't want him in control of anything. Now, the argument you're going to make to me is, well, if Miranda and fucking Lombardo are actually the bosses, then why would they even worry? It's politics. It's simply politics. They didn't want Tommy to go for a power struggle. They wanted it left the way it was. And Tommy sort of realizes this. So what he ends up doing is he wants to be valued, he wants to have power, and he felt like if he was bringing millions of dollars to the table, then the commission would have to recognize him in a more universal kind of way. And he also figures too that if he does this, he'll be able to keep a firm grip on the Genovese crime family, and that's really what he wanted. And what he ends up doing is he has a meeting with the commission, and he asks to borrow $4 million to open essentially what is a narcotics trafficking ring. And it was Carlo Gambino who absolutely said, "Yep, go ahead, not a problem." And Tommy didn't realize that Carlo Gambino was setting him up. Gambino wanted him fucking out, and the reason why he wanted him out is because he wanted Funzi Thierry to take over the family. They wanted him out because he was sick. They needed somebody besides Miranda and fucking Lombardo to take over. They just wanted somebody in there that they, I don't want to say control, but they wanted somebody in there to their liking. And what it really was a trap. Listen, there would be no way that Gambino would allow his rivals to take advantage of him, and he wasn't about to hand the guy $4 million, let him open up a narcotics trafficking ring, and make all his fucking money. Granted, it's a business investment, but Gambino was smarter than that, and he looked past that. He was 3 steps ahead of Tommy, knowing where it was heading. So he allowed it because it would serve a couple of purposes. So Tommy just jumps right into the narcotics trafficking, and not long after he starts this shit, law enforcement shuts it down, acting on an anonymous tip, and most of his crew get arrested. Now, here's the interesting part. We saw this happen to Genovese, so it's not a far stretch for me to believe that Gambino didn't pull the fucking rug under his feet, too. I cannot not believe for a second that Gambino didn't have something to do with it. He wanted Tommy out of the way. Drugs was the easiest way to do it, but he also had a third sort of thing here, and he realized that if he got pinched, all right, he's probably going to go to prison. He's out of the way. I get Funzi Thierry. We can get him in there, and now we got somewhat of control of the situation. However, there was a hiccup. Once Tommy's crew gets arrested, Carlo Gambino sends Paul Castellano to collect back the loan money. He wants the fucking money back. You fucked up. Give me the money. The problem is Tommy didn't have any more and didn't have any money. And so Gambino starts to think to himself, wait a second here. I gave you $4 million. You've been operating for 3 months and it's gone. And so what Gambino suspects is that Tommy was hiding the money. The indictment comes down. He starts to move money around in case he has to flee or in case, he needs besides fleeing the case, he wanted a little piggy bank money in case, God forbid. Also, he was sick. I could sort of get it. Maybe he funnels the money to his family, but Gambino is absolutely fucking irate about the situation and says, kill him. It gave Gambino more justification with the commission. Not that he needed the commission's approval to totally kill him, because at that point, Carlo was really the boss of bosses at the time. But it gave him plausible reason to want him dead. It wasn't good enough to just say, you know what, he's old, he's sick, let's take him out. That's not a good enough reason. But if he robbed Carlo Gambino, that gives him all the reason in the world. So, all that being said, listen, Gambino could easily recover from that kind of financial loss. But like I just told you, he wanted him out for years. He wanted Frank Funzi Thierry in his boss. And so basically he orders his death. It's long been asserted, at least publicly, that Gambino allowed Eboli to set up the narcotics distribution to set him up. We just talked about the reasons why he would have done that, and I typically lend myself to believing that. Carlo Gambino, if you look at anything that I've talked about historically about some of the moves he made, are epic. They're Machiavellian in every kind of fucking way. Excuse me. So basically, Gambino uses the same scheme on Tommy that he used on Genovese. A little bit different, but it's the same sort of thing. And then on July 16th in 1972, Tommy leaves his girlfriend's apartment in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. Tommy gets into his chauffeured Cadillac, sits down, minding his own business, And as he's sitting there, a passing pickup truck rolls by and just starts unloading with a fucking M3 carbine. Tommy is shot 5 times. He was shot in the head, the neck, and the face, and he died instantly, which allowed Carlo Gambino to get the guys in that he wanted. Now, there has long been a rumor that the reason why Tommy Eboli was killed was because he was eating dinner with the cast from The Godfather. Let me tell you why that's not true. This is a very big misconception. Tommy Eboli didn't have really much to do with The Godfather. I have talked about this at length, and here's the truth. The guy behind The Godfather, the guy who told Francis Ford Coppola where to fucking go, what to write, was Russell Bufalino. It was nobody else. It was Joe Colombo. A lot of people think Colombo was behind that, but it wasn't. Colombo just tried to basically shake them down. But the guy behind it was Bufalino, because Bufalino owned all the unions in the Hollywood production shit. He owned all the unions. He could put a stop to it. And so what would happen is when parts of the screenplay would be rewritten, it would go from Francis Ford Coppola straight to Russell Bufalino. And Bufalino was the go-to guy for that. Joe Colombo likes to take credit for all of that nonsense, but it's simply not true. And let me tell you why. Colombo was way too high profile at that point. He was doing the Italian American Civil Liberties Union bullshit, speaking out in public. Meanwhile, he's a mob boss, so he was bringing himself a ton of fucking heat with that. He was too high profile to be involved in that nonsense. That would have been way too much. Bufalino, on the other hand, was very well known in mob circles, but very unknown publicly. And it's like I said, it's fact that Bufalino was the one who controlled how The Godfather went. I know Gianni Russo likes to tell great, fantastic stories about other stuff, but he's not telling the truth either. It was definitely Russell Bufalino. So the truth is that Tommy didn't get killed because he sat with the actors eating lunch. I mean, think about how stupid that sounds. You're gonna clip a guy who's a boss of a family because he had lunch with Al Pacino or Robert De Niro or James Caan, Talia Shire, whoever the fuck. It just doesn't make sense. And people who write this, and I'm not saying it's one particular person, because I've seen this all over the web. I don't know where this shit comes from. I think it came from Gianni Russo, to be honest with you. But the truth is that it's nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. You have to logically think about these things. Guys aren't going to kill other guys because they had lunch with Robert De Niro. If that's the case, I don't know how many mob guys would be dead already. This was about money. This was about power. And Gambino is not the type of guy who would have ordered his death for having lunch with an actor. Get real. If that's the case, Jerry Orbach should have been whacked back in the 70s when he was eating dinner with Joey Gallo and hanging out at the fucking hoity-toity fucking parties that Joey Gallo was going to. And so that's the life and times of Tommy Eboli. Now, granted, I wish that it would have been an hour-and-a-half show on him, but there's just not a lot that's known about his youth. And these are things that are hard to find out. So, where does this leave us? Next week, all new show. What I can say is I'm going to do a Q&A next week as well, but it's not going to be a 2-hour Q&A. Hour and 15 minutes, and then we're going to do maybe one or two guys. Maybe two guys from Chicago. I haven't figured it out yet. Maybe we'll talk about Frank Lucas or Bumpy Johnson or some of these guys. Because some of the guys that I do cover, there is stuff known, but there's not enough to fill the gap of 2 hours, which apparently I'm doing a 2.5 hour plus show these days. So if the case is that I cover a topic where there's just not enough information to like pull the show together to make it long, because people seem to enjoy the long shows, then what I'll do is I'll do two guys. But what I'll do is I'll do it in between the same period. I really at some point want to do the 5 Points Gang. I think that that's very instrumental in organized crime. I also want to cover Sicilian bosses and Nobliadan bosses, Andrangada guys, Camorra guys, Canadian guys. So there's a lot I want to do. The problem is that, you know, when I sit down to do a show, I have to kind of figure out, okay, how long can I breach this? How long can I stretch this to get to 2 hours or whatever? And so that's sort of the thing. I don't know everything, obviously. I do a lot of research on the people that I do cover. I'm able to uncover things that nobody ever talks about. And that's sort of what is unique about me. So if some storylines about guys are shorter than others, it's just because there's not enough information out there. And that's the thing. I cannot, what I will not do is invest my time reading a 600-page book on somebody on Monday, read it in 2 days, turn around, and then digest the whole thing on the show. I'm just not going to do that. So I gather my information from the streets. I gather my information from online. I gather my sources from people that knew people. All that being said, that's how it operates. So you can, a lot of people have asked, you can submit questions to me on Twitter at RealMobTalk7 for the Q&As. Also on Facebook, we post a lot of stuff on there. I always post Q&A, says submit your questions, and everybody does. So that's the other way to do it. Give us a like and a follow and a retweet on Twitter, Mob Talk Radio at RealMobTalk7. We are on YouTube at www.youtube.com/C/Mob Talk Radio. Subscribe to the channel. The only thing we ever ask is you share our stuff. That's it. Just share. Even if you hate it, just share. Look at this fucking jerk off. Share. Just share. Share it in your group pages. Share it with friends. The only way the show gets better is if we grow. And the bigger we grow, the more opportunities that are going to happen and the bigger things are going to get. And I'm looking forward to moving on to the pay site, and I'm looking forward to changing how we do the show, doing live shows. I got a whole bunch of guests that are starting to sort of filter in now. So we're going to have some interesting guests on. I am going to have Tommaso Rosiello, Sean King, more than likely, and Seth Nicoletti on the show to talk about Brooklyn Ties at some point, and to just do kind of like a mob roundtable of things. I think it would be fun. I think you guys deserve like another opinion other than my own, because let's face it, I am biased to an extent because of my affinity for street guys and guys that I grew up with and guys that I know. I'm always going to be sort of counteractive against the government, and that's just who I am. You don't have to agree with me, if you don't buy it. But the reality is that that's just where we're at. So reach out to us on Twitter at RealMobTalk7. Check out Ciro DiPaggio on Facebook. Type in Mob King on YouTube. Watch the trailers. They're very interesting and very well crafted and look insanely cool. Follow Ciro DiPaggio, on all the Facebook stuff. All that being said, we will be back next week. We will do a simplified Q&A, and we will cover either one or two other guys. In the meantime, I just wanted to thank everybody for listening in, putting up with my nonsense and my ranting, and I think that's about it. So have a great week, everybody. We'll see you all next week.